The Galaxy S27 Ultra was shaping up to have one of Samsung's most interesting camera upgrades in years, but now that upgrade may have been canceled before the phone even launches. Before we jump in, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. It really helps me keep bringing you more tech breakdowns like this one. Samsung was reportedly considering bringing back variable aperture technology, a feature last seen on the Galaxy S9, specifically to compete with Apple's upcoming iPhone 18 Pro. But according to new industry reports, Samsung may have decided the upgrade simply isn't worth the extra cost, complexity, and thickness, and that could completely change the camera battle between Samsung and Apple next year. The idea behind a variable aperture camera is actually pretty straightforward. Instead of having one fixed aperture, the camera can physically adjust how much light enters the lens. In theory, that gives the phone more control over different shooting conditions. For example, a wider aperture can let in more light when you're shooting in darker environments, while a narrower aperture can help with certain bright scenes and potentially improve depth and sharpness in specific situations. Samsung used this approach on the Galaxy S9 back in 2018, but eventually moved away from it. For the Galaxy S27 Ultra, the rumored comeback would have been particularly interesting because Apple is also expected to introduce variable aperture technology with the iPhone 18 Pro and iPhone 18 Pro Max. That could have created a genuine camera showdown between Samsung and Apple, with both companies taking different approaches to computational photography, while also bringing more traditional optical control back into flagship smartphone cameras. But Samsung may have pulled the plug. According to the report, one of the biggest reasons is the current surge in memory and semiconductor component costs. The smartphone industry is dealing with rising component prices, and adding a more complicated camera system would only increase manufacturing expenses. And variable aperture isn't just something you can add without consequences. The technology requires additional mechanical components, which can make the camera module more complicated and potentially thicker. For a phone like the Galaxy S27 Ultra, where Samsung is already trying to balance camera hardware, battery capacity, cooling, and a relatively slim design, that extra space matters. Samsung also appears to have questioned whether consumers would actually notice enough of a difference to justify the added cost. That's an important point. A feature can sound impressive on a specification sheet, but if most people don't see a major improvement in everyday photos, Samsung has to ask whether it makes sense to spend more money and make the camera system more complicated. And there's another potentially disappointing change. The Galaxy S27 Ultra is also rumored to be dropping the 10-megapixel 3x telephoto camera. If that happens, alongside the cancellation of variable aperture, Samsung's next Ultra flagship could actually end up looking less impressive on paper than the Galaxy S26 Ultra in some areas. That doesn't automatically mean the S27 Ultra will take worse photos. Samsung could still improve image processing, sensors, autofocus, low light photography, zoom quality, or other parts of the camera system. Sometimes a simpler hardware setup combined with better software can outperform a more complicated system. But from a consumer perspective, fewer obvious hardware upgrades could make the S27 Ultra harder to market as a major camera revolution. And this is where Apple could gain an interesting advantage. If the iPhone 18 Pro really does arrive with variable aperture, Apple could become the only major flagship manufacturer in this particular rivalry offering the feature. Even if the real-world benefits are relatively modest, having it on the specification sheet gives Apple another talking point against Samsung. The bigger question is price. If Samsung saves money by abandoning the more expensive camera system, there's at least a possibility that the S27 Ultra could maintain a similar starting price, instead of becoming even more expensive. The current model starts at around $1,299.99, although future pricing will depend on the cost of other components, including the next-generation Snapdragon chip. And honestly, I think Samsung's decision makes sense if the variable aperture system really doesn't provide a significant improvement. At this point, smartphone cameras are already extremely capable. For most people, improvements in processing, dynamic range, autofocus, stabilization, and low-light photography can matter much more than adding another mechanical component. Still, I can't help feeling that the potential Samsung versus Apple variable aperture camera battle would have been fascinating to watch. For now, though, none of this is officially confirmed. Samsung could still change its plans before the Galaxy S27 Ultra is announced, and the final camera hardware won't be known until the company officially unveils the phone in early 2027. So the Galaxy S27 Ultra may still have some surprises waiting for us. But if these reports are accurate, Samsung's biggest rumored camera upgrade could disappear before it ever reaches the market, and that makes the upcoming iPhone 18 Pro versus Galaxy S27 Ultra camera battle much more interesting. What's your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments section. See you in the next video. Take care.